Good evening, guys. Welcome. It is Sunday night. It is Pontificating with Pete, and I think we're going to make this a regular thing. At least I'm going to do everything in my capacity to make this a regular thing. A lot has happened, and who's to say that it's not going to become sort of like a regular occurrence from now on? Every time. What took so long? I wanted to wait until Due Dissonance ended their stream, and I was making a late dinner, so that's what I was doing. But I'm here now, and I apologize for getting your hopes up that I was going to be here earlier. But as you know, I've gotten a lot better at punctuality, I have to say. But like I said, this is a little bit more of this being sort of like a freewheeling type of situation. I'm going to do my very best to make this a 9 p.m. Instead of 10 p.m., but a 9 p.m. live stream weekly. As I mentioned before, there's also the possibility that we may have another member of the team, our good friend, Mona Lisa. She may be doing a weekly show as well. So we are growing the channel. As you guys have probably noticed, our numbers have picked up. We're just getting started already. If you guys haven't hit the like button, make sure that you do that. Make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure that you share. Obviously, we want to get this out there to as many people as possible. Andrew, I'm sorry you're tired of Tulsi, but trust me, you're going to get very tired of her very quick because she's going to be around for a while now. She's not going anywhere. And I guess there's a number of places that we could start this evening. I guess, yeah, we could start with Tulsi. I'm fine with that. You know, I remember, here's my position on Tulsi Gabbard. I'm actually very nuanced when it comes to her. Let me start off by saying, yes, she is extremely calculating and extremely opportunistic. With that said, I have a lot of respect for her for what she chose to do back in 2016. I think that there's probably a couple of layers. How's it going, Tony? Glad you guys are all here this evening. What I will say is that I don't think Tulsi fully understood exactly what was going to happen to her when she supported Bernie back in 16. But I think what essentially did happen, this is just my assumption here, I could be wrong, but I would say based on the best possible political calculus is that Tulsi, with the strong arming of the Clinton faction led by Wasserman Schultz, wanted her to basically get in line for Hillary Clinton. I'm not sure Bernie had anything to do with it at the time. That just ended up becoming sort of a, oh, look what I found type of situation. I think that Tulsi wanted a fair and equitable primary process. She realized very early on that that was not what was happening. And so she had to make a choice. Get in line like a good soldier or go rogue. She decided to go rogue and support Bernie Sanders, and she thought that she had enough juice where that might actually result in Bernie winning the primary. I do think that there was some calculus to that. I do. The lengths in which the Democratic Party establishment went to destroy this woman, who not only is a service member of the armed forces, served in combat, she's also a medic. So she's somebody who sees death up close and personal quite a bit. It's also part of the reason why her disposition is so impressive. She doesn't get rattled. Her demeanor is exactly what you look for in a leader. And I think for a lot of people that are looking around wondering, well, are there any real tough female leaders out there that don't come off like they're just a jerk? I think Tulsi's the only one that's really out there right now. And while she attempted to run for president in 2020, and she did not get behind Bernie when it was obvious that her campaign was not tracking, my understanding, again, this is the information that I was given, is that Tulsi thought that there was a chance that she was going to be Biden's VP. And so that, I think, in many ways is the reason why she decided to do what she did. And let's be honest, anybody who was a part of the two Bernie presidential runs, 2016 and 2020, there's no comparison. Bernie may have had a better chance technically in 20, but the grassroots energy was nothing like it was compared to 2016. 2016 was special, very special for anybody who was a part of it. And while I think to a degree it was captured again in 2020, it just wasn't the same. But I still thought Bernie had a chance. He just wasn't willing to go to the lengths that he needed to in order to win. Same was true in 2016. And so what I do think was a big problem regarding Tulsi is very often the Democratic establishment, when they bury people, they bury them and make sure that they're dead. Well, apparently they buried Tulsi, but they didn't make sure she was dead. Tulsi had incredible appeal that I think they clearly saw, which is why she became the vice chair of the DNC very early on in her career. And as a result, we're going to probably ride her political acumen and ability for many years to come, especially if Hillary didn't win in 2016. Assuming, of course, that she got in line and did her job. She didn't get in line. She didn't do her job. She decided to do what was right. And it cost her her entire political career in the Democratic Party. Leave it to the Republicans to just say, oh, she's good. She could actually do really good in our party. And slowly but surely, the transition began, and Tulsi began her odyssey over to the GOP, even though she was an independent. She got her own show, went on a lot of podcasts. She's, again, you can hate the player, you don't have to hate the game. I've said many times, Cory Booker would be a great example of a politician who is as corporate and Zionist and everything that we dislike about politics. But what Cory Booker does have also is he has charm. He's a very nice man. And you talk to anybody in politics and they will say the same. He very rarely, if ever, has a negative thing to say about anybody. He's just that likable guy. His politics are terrible. But that is an example of what we have to deal with in the political arena. Recognizing the talent when it's there. Tulsi has a lot of it. And I do think that the fear from the Democratic establishment is that she is going to be a real force for years to come. And she is going to drive a lot of people who would otherwise be, possibly willing to give the Democrats a look, not with Tulsi. Because there's a lot of women out there in particular who are looking for the first Madam President. Well, in my humble opinion, they are a lot closer today with somebody like Tulsi in the GOP than anybody in the Democratic Party, and that includes AOC, who we'll get to in a minute. But what we did see this past week, which was incredible as far as I'm concerned, but it really speaks to the depravity of the Democratic Party and where it is today, how it's an absolute shambles, and it's going to continue to sink. And the reason I say that is you can have certain spokespeople go on national TV and espouse your message as to why they should be supporting the party and why the other side isn't doing too good. Well, what the Democrats have basically done is they've doubled down on their bullshit rhetoric, and they've doubled down on this idea that Tulsi is a Russian asset, that she is dangerous, and she cannot be confirmed. Now, who better to make that statement than you know who?
Tulsi Gabbard is someone who has met with war criminals, violated the Department of State's guidance, and secretly, clandestinely went to Syria and met with Assad, who gassed and attacked his own people with chemical weapons. She's considered to be essentially, by most assessments, a Russian asset.
It's always very telling when a person blinks constantly when they talk, which means that they're lying through their teeth. Plus, most, if not all, of what she's saying is rehearsed. And I think it really speaks to the fact that the images that they're showing of Tulsi are one of a person who's smiling and grinning ear to ear, because in the end, she won. Tulsi won. And Wasserman Schultz is still meandering around like there's any relevance to her political career at this point, and how the Democratic Party thinks that it's okay for her to go out there and be a spokesperson is incredible. There isn't one person that wants to pull her aside and say, yeah, maybe you should sit this one out, or maybe you should just stay away from the TV cameras altogether. No, there isn't that one person that actually does the sensible thing, especially since the Democrats are bleeding right now, literally. Like it's like an open vein. Like that's where they're at this point. So let's make sure that we bury ourselves even deeper and have this person come out and speak on our behalf.
And would be the most.
Is that how you consider her? Is that what you consider her?
Oh, yes. There's no question. I consider her someone who is likely a Russian asset, who would be.
Remember, choose those words carefully, because libel is very easy to prove if you don't nuance it as carefully as possible. Yes, she's likely a Russian asset. I can't prove that she's a Russian asset. See, Tony gets it. Tulsi's a Zionist. That's the thing that Debbie is never going to mention, because Debbie's a Zionist too. That's why. And as Kat points out, Russia, Russia, Russia. They haven't changed any talking points in almost a decade. They're still going with it. I guess they didn't get their asses kicked hard enough.
Be as the DNI responsible for managing our entire intelligence community, hold all of our most significant intelligence information and secrets, and essentially would be a direct line to our enemies. And so I
don't know what the fuck I'm saying. Why does anybody honestly care? That's what I don't understand. I know we've got commentary in the chat and everyone thinks at the end of the day, as Jen always likes to say, fly, Icarus, fly. Debbie's going to continue flying very close to the sun, and hopefully it'll be too close at some point. But all this does, all people like Debbie do, is make Tulsi seem that much more appealing. Ooh, you know what? If Debbie Wasserman Schultz hates Tulsi that much, maybe she is worth supporting. Maybe she is worth giving some consideration. That's what I take away from it. I don't know what you guys think, but I do think that is a huge part of Tulsi's appeal. She became such a fuck you to the Democrats, and now that there is a very good chance that she's going to have a very prominent position. Again, the GOP has the Senate, so it's fairly likely she'll get confirmed, but we'll see what happens. Exactly as Mina Lita says. I mean, at some point, it just becomes pathetic. But the person that we should all be more concerned about, and there's a lot of people that have very strong opinions about, why certain people shouldn't be in positions of authority. If there's any validity to it, I'll go with it. I'm willing to give people the benefit of the doubt, but as I've said before, I think that there's a lot of fear with having somebody like Tulsi in power, because as I've mentioned before, and I'll say again, you cannot underestimate, if you know anything about political appeal, Tulsi's got a lot of it. She just does. I mean, she is loved by independents in the GOP. And I do think that the rallies that she did with RFK made a difference. I do believe that. But Debbie's not the only person who has a problem with Tulsi. AOC has a problem with Tulsi too. And if you didn't know any better, you would think that they were getting the same script.
And we haven't even gotten to Tulsi Gabbard potentially having access to national security information. And Russia loves it, loves her.
And I actually think almost more than Matt Gaetz, Tulsi Gabbard's appointment is devastating. And
what's devastating about it? Tulsi's more dangerous than Matt Gaetz. I don't get it. AOC is going to get her comeuppance at the end of this podcast for a good reason. Apparently she does, Aaron. We'll see.
Tulsi Gabbard's nomination, as much as she says that she's an anti-war person, she's not.
Yeah.
She supports very pro-war individuals.
Including
abroad.
in Syria.
And let's be very clear,
Yeah.
a Tulsi Gabbard nomination is a pro-war nomination globally. Point blank, period.
As is Donald Trump as president of the United States.
Well, kudos to you for going on with Joy Reid. I tell you, the names sometimes really make you laugh when you think about it. Alex is definitely playing the political game, but this is a dangerous game that she's playing. She couldn't just come out and say, if you were being nuanced, Alex, and you were attempting to build some form of political acumen, which maybe she's trying to do, but isn't doing a very good job of it, then she could easily make a statement along the lines of, I appreciate Tulsi's service. I disagree with her position on Modi. I disagree with her position on Israel. And that would have landed because it's true. But instead, she just decides, no, I'm just going to go along with the DNC talking points. Well, if you're on MSNBC, I guess you have to, am I right? The thing that AOC doesn't understand, and maybe never will, she comes off like a child. I don't take her seriously. The way she speaks, if you're going to make those types of statements, it stands to reason that you would at least come off as somewhat professional, but she sounds like a catty teenager complaining about a girl she doesn't like. That's how she sounds. And it's a sad reality that we cannot have any type of political nuance. Zero. You say that Tulsi Gabbard is a threat to national security? On what basis? How did you not come out and say Tony Blinken is a threat to national security? What about what's going on with Joe Biden right now? Although we know that it isn't President Biden who's doing it. We'll discuss this tomorrow night. Remember, tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, our guest will be Harvey K. We may have another guest. We shall see. We're going to have a special guest also on Thursday, in addition to our libertarian panel of Ken Khan and Angela McCarthy. I appreciate everything. I appreciate everything that Tulsi has done for our country as a service member. In fact, the only person that I really appreciate when it comes to their opinion on war and peace are people that have actually served in the armed forces. I don't need to hear the opinions about war from somebody who has never served, especially if they're pro-war. And we got a hell of a lot of them in D.C. That's a big problem. And it's very easy, now that the Dems are not in power, to all of a sudden espouse an anti-war message. This is the side of the two-party system that people, I hope, are done with. I know I am. Either you have principles or you don't. Stick with them. But I will tell you, people like AOC and DWS, they just look like haters to somebody like Tulsi. They couldn't even wait. Like, this really gets to them. But I tell you, what's the saying? How does the saying go? The arc of justice it bends towards justice. The arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. I did something along those lines. I do think that had you rewound the clock about 4 years, there's nobody who would have expected Tulsi to be in the position she's in right now. But she is, and she's ahead of AOC for that first Madam President opportunity. And that absolutely enrages AOC. And the difference between AOC and Tulsi, Tulsi's not even going to respond to her. She's not even going to acknowledge that she's alive. So, who's the one who's really the one looking up at this point? Maybe it was different before. Just as Mary points out, I think the thing that really drew people to, I would say initially Bernie, but then ultimately Trump, is people were just done with the hypocrisy. The hypocrisy is what pisses everybody off. Thank you, Ron. I appreciate that. Make sure, if you are not currently a patron, go to patreon.com/generational change for as little as $5 a month. You can become a supporter of our small but mighty channel. Every little bit counts, and every little bit is appreciated. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit. And thank you, Sajid. You can also drop a super chat. Those are always appreciated. And remember, you can also go to Cash App, and we want to make sure that any amount of capital that is being contributed to our small but mighty channel, one of the ways that you can make a difference is going here. You can go to Cash App, $GenChange. That's another way that you can contribute if you choose. But most importantly, make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure that you have smashed the like button. Make sure that you've shared and leave a comment, because we appreciate each and every one of you being here. It really does mean a lot. In 2 weeks, I will be moving into Florida's 1st Congressional District, where the recently retired Matt Gaetz was the representative for, I think Gaetz was there for a decade. And so, now what we have is a situation where Trump, who, as we have seen, is extremely loyal, and because of that, he is making Matt Gaetz the Attorney General, or is recommending that the GOP confirm Matt Gaetz as the Attorney General. Now, there are many issues that you could obviously point to when it comes to Gaetz, but I will tell you, the best thing about Matt Gaetz, in my opinion, is that he doesn't take corporate special interest money. He's one of those rare GOPers. Same with the Democrats. I mean, they all suck. But the ones that don't, the ones that do not take that corporate special interest money, they are the ones that we should be listening to and appreciating, because they're willing to stand on principle, even if we don't agree with everything that they stand for. It's why I'm such a big supporter of Congressman Thomas Massie. And so I will tell you that somebody like Matt Gaetz is dangerous enough where he might actually shake some serious things up if he is the Attorney General. That includes officially pardoning Julian Assange, pardoning Albrecht, or recommending anyway, dropping the charges, I would say. Possibly opening up files on cases that we never get to talk about, really. Thank you very much, Not Bloody Likely, and we're very appreciative to have you here. Every contribution counts, but that's a big one. So thank you so much. I'm going to leave that up there for a minute. Pay close attention to the people that say that you should not support this person. This person is not worth supporting. They're bad. They're evil. They're going to really screw things up. Now, who's saying it? I think that matters. Thank you, Sajid. Even though the establishment despise Tulsi, I still don't trust her because she's a grifter and sneaky. Don't hate the player, hate the game. One thing I said, I don't trust AOC. I don't trust Tulsi either. Who can you really trust in politics? That's one of the great lessons of the last decade that we should all be aware of. Who can you really trust? Really not anybody. I don't trust Matt Gaetz. I don't know him. I don't particularly think of him one way or the other. Let the legal proceedings pan out the way that they're going to pan out, particularly when it comes to his legal situation as well. But when it comes to the Warhawks, when it comes to the real swamp dwellers of D.C., does it get much worse than John Bolton? Because John Bolton had a very strong opinion about Matt Gaetz. If anything, this is an endorsement of Matt Gaetz, in which I would support Matt Gaetz simply because this son of a bitch says that you shouldn't. So here's what he had to say.
It was the worst cabinet level appointment in history until they then heard about the Matt Gaetz appointment. Really, my reaction was that this is like the legend of Caligula, the Roman emperor, who wanted to nominate his horse as a Roman consul. You had to be a Roman senator at the time to be a consul, and it was intended to show how demeaned and degraded the Roman Senate had become.
I would like you guys to put in the chat what you think John Bolton does in his spare time. What does he do for fun? The funniest response will get acknowledged. Let's hear what you have to say. He is an evil, evil fuck. And I have been watching this guy since at least over 20 years. And I distinctly remember him back in 2002. He was one of the loudest, most fierce advocates for the war in Iraq. And he was so staunch about it. And he came off as such a get off my lawn son of a bitch. Even back then, I'll tell you one thing, John Bolton has looked like he's 75 for probably 40 years. So this comes as no surprise. But, mad son of a bitch. Bloodthirsty. Chicken hawk. Pussy.
So now we're going to see whether the American Senate can stand up and reject two people who are totally unqualified, unfit professionally, and really lacking in the immoral characteristics, the character that you.
Well, if anybody would know a thing or two about lacking moral character, it's definitely John Bolton. So I guess he's got something to say in that regard. John Bolton is the ultimate neocon imperialist. He's probably got one of these, which is always dangerous. Having one of these and not being very tall are two of the most dangerous aspects of men in politics. Always be wary of that. Do not elect people to positions of immense power who are under 6 feet tall. My opinion. I may be biased, but Not Bloody Likely's got it. He is the evil Ned Flanders. Well, sir, he has certainly got me on that one.
need to hold these jobs. I think this vote should be 100-0 against both of them.
And even
Well, thankfully, he doesn't have as much say as he once did. And hopefully, that's a conversation that we can have with Angela McArdle and CanCon on Thursday. Does the libertarian wing of the GOP now have enough say where they can start pushing out people like John Bolton to where the only place that they have a voice is on CNN? And let's face it, CNN, MSNBC in particular, massive cuts across the board for their corporate media. It's a real shame to see them go down the tube. No tears were shed. And who knows how long they'll last. Yes, it's probably not, in terms of credentials, the right position for somebody like Matt Gaetz to be the next attorney general. I can understand that, and I think that that's fairly reasonable. However, where are the people that you could put into these positions that are actually going to try to do a few good things? I don't know. Because there isn't that many in DC. I would say that Matt Gaetz is probably on the lower rung, if at all. Yeah, remember, there are no good guys. That's what we have to understand. DC is not filled with people. Really look at this like it's a sport. Now, I will say that the races are like, the elections are like a sport, but politicians are not athletes. We should not be cheering for them. In fact, when they do something right, we shouldn't be celebrating them either. Just tell them that they're actually doing their job. That's what they're supposed to be doing. If you're given immense power and responsibility to direct this country in the right way, I remember when people would go, "Oh, did you see that person voted this way on that?" Who cares? Nancy Pelosi is running for the 20th time. What that also tells me, and the reason why that's so important, is because Nancy Pelosi moves the money. Tomorrow night, we are going to cover a very important election. It was a congressional race in the state of Washington. It was Marie Gluesenkamp Perez who won re-election against Joe Kent. That is a very important race, and we're going to talk about it tomorrow night. And it's about the entire corruption within the system. I do think that there has to be, I'm not going to say a mass exodus away from, the political sphere in terms of elections, but there's just way too much emphasis on who gets elected, especially at the federal level. If you really want to focus, the focus has to be at the local level, especially in nonpartisan races. But as we've said many times before, a lot of it has to do with whether or not we are electing people to positions of power that are not funded by corporate special interests. And in that case, the parties don't really matter. They just don't. I think the best elected representative in the House is Thomas Massie, and he's a Republican. So there you go. That's where I stand. Now, in terms of the appointments that are going to be significant, I do think that, and I know a lot of people may have a problem with it, and that's okay. When I look at somebody like RFK, I look at somebody who you have to take with a grain of salt, and you have to assess where things are good and where they're not so good. He will have opinions that most people are not going to agree with, and that's okay. Because I do think during his run that he had opinions about some key issues that I agreed with wholeheartedly. The most notable, as I've mentioned time and again, is he was the one person running for high office that was talking about a critical part of our broken economic and political system. Private equity is completely taking over the housing market in the United States. That is a crisis of epic proportions, to the point at which most people will never be able to buy a home. And that's a big problem. RFK has been very adamant about BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, and also Blackstone and the role that they've played. Now, you know why he hasn't mentioned Blackstone as much? Because Blackstone and Mr. Schwartz are big donors to Donald Trump. That's a big thing. So if you're going to get it right, get it all right. Cover it all. BlackRock was a huge donor to Biden/Harris. Remember, what they do is they play both sides. They just make sure that they get enough capital placed on each side. So it's basically heads I win, tails you lose. They can't lose. They win every time. That's what we're dealing with. I do subscribe in many ways to RFK's Make America Healthy Again initiative. I think it's great. And I do believe that living a healthy lifestyle can actually help solve a lot of the problems in our country. I really believe that. I believe that eating right, exercising, getting enough sleep, not stressing yourself out too much, can have profound effects on your overall health. And that includes mental health, your ability to stay focused. It helps your self-confidence. But so much of those things are predicated on what we put in our bodies. What are we eating? I'd like to think I'm a relatively healthy person, but truth be told, I'm not that healthy as much as I would like to be. I'm 41, and I would like to live at least into my 90s. I feel like I've got a lot more living to do. Some people say, oh, you're already middle-aged. I don't feel that way. Of course, Scott. There is no question that that environmental health is a huge part of it. But remember, biggest thing about our health, and it comes to the environmental health, we don't have clean drinking water. Now, I don't know what your guys' opinion is regarding fluoride in our water, but the fact is, and this is maybe the biggest issue we have right now, and Trump is just in your face about it, but it's all about the powers that be and what they want. The powers that be want to frack the shit out of this country because there is oil under our soil in a lot of places. It doesn't matter about the health of the average person when there is a lot of profit to be made. And the same is true about whether or not you're eating a slice of bread that has 5 grams of sugar in it. It's the same thing. Remember, we are in the business of fixing problems, not preventing them. That's not as cost effective. For their bottom line, they want a nation of sick people. Is it possible that RFK could have a tremendous impact in the position that he could potentially be confirmed in? Yes, I do believe he could. And yes, I support him for that position. I'm going to play you a video right now so you guys get a better idea of exactly what the real problems are that we're dealing with when it comes to our health. This is a serious crisis. Sajid, one thing I will tell you, and I will say this to all of you guys, there are a lot of conservatives, rural conservatives, working class people who voted for Trump who absolutely agree with single payer healthcare, who understand. Here's what RFK had to say regarding our food and why this Make America Healthy Again initiative is a big deal. Unfortunately, Minalita, there's a lot of people out there who will ask you to do as they say, not as they do. I saw that picture too. The message still stands.
This is what most Americans innocently put into their bodies these days, and most alarmingly, into the bodies of their children. And it's no coincidence that Americans die earlier than Canadians or Germans or Italians or Japanese or Koreans or Australians or most any other comparable country. And it wasn't always that way. Until the early 1990s, our life expectancy was the same or better than other developed countries. Then suddenly, more and more Americans began suffering from chronic diseases, from obesity, cancer, diabetes, kidney disease, Alzheimer's, heart disease, and all kinds of autoimmune diseases. Our maternal mortality rate soared to the highest of any developed country on earth. Same with infant mortality. Like the frog in the slowly boiling water, we didn't really notice as we got sicker and sicker. We've grown now to accept chronic disease conditions as normal. But now, in 2024, we're finally waking up to this cataclysm, and we're asking ourselves, how in the world did this happen? Well, a big part of it is our diet. Restaurants that serve contaminated food are fined or shut down. But when it's the government that approves the poisons in our food, a few people get very, very rich, and the toxins end up in every supermarket aisle. Let me show you what I mean. Doritos, Cheez-Its, Cap'n Crunch, gummy bears. Everyone knows that these are junk foods, so maybe you wouldn't be too surprised to see that.
But remember, the important thing to remember about this is what's key here, guys. We know, at least I think most of us know, that the foods that he's showing us are junk and basically poison. But much like our involvement in the political arena, we are a microcosm of the greater problem because most people don't follow this stuff. How many people really read the labels on the food that they eat when they go into the supermarket? Especially anything that comes in a box or a bag. Probably not.
The ingredients include a lot of poisons, including a harmful yellow dye called tatrazine, or yellow dye number 5. What you may not know is that this dye was originally made out of the sludge that's left over when you turn coal into coke for blast furnaces. It's called coal tar, and I've actually sued many big industries for legacy contamination of coal tar all around the country because it's so toxic and it's so harmful to the environment and human beings. A century ago, it was just an obnoxious industrial byproduct that everybody was trying to figure out ways to get rid of. One of the ways that they did that was by paving roads. But then a British chemist figured out that the coal tar could be used to derive fabric dye. And if fabric dye, why not food? Food manufacturers began using it to cover up the discoloration of low-quality foods that they wanted to pass off on unsuspecting customers. They didn't know back then that this yellow dye, tartrazine, causes tumors, asthma, developmental delays, neurological damage, ADD, ADHD, hormone disruption, gene damage, anxiety, depression, intestinal injuries.
This is a prime example of why we can't get anything done. You don't like listening to him, Jay? Too fucking bad. He's the only one talking about it. Don't hate the messenger. Or you can hate the messenger. Don't hate the message. Because everything he's saying is correct. About this. Maybe not about everything, that's for sure, but not about this. He's right about this. Completely right.
It's in everyday kid snacks like popcorn, mac and cheese, fruit snacks. It's in sports drinks like Gatorade and so-called vitamin water. It's even added to chicken broth, to corn, to pickles, to mustard, and to yogurt. And so, of course, our kids get sick. And we lovingly feed them chewable vitamins, which have, surprise, tartrazine. If just one of them can cause all of these problems, imagine what they're doing in combination. That has never been studied. If we took all of these chemicals out, our nation would get healthier immediately. We'd have fewer sick days. We'd have better focus. We'd have less anxiety. Our kids would learn more easily. We'd lose weight. We'd have more energy. We'd have fewer tumors and longer lives. Enough is enough. President Trump and I are going to stop the mass poisoning of American children. Together, we're going to make America healthy again.
All right, let's see it. You've got a window to show us what you got. He is going to very likely get confirmed. He is a Kennedy. I want to give him an opportunity to show what he is capable of doing. Considering how bad things are, honestly, I don't think we can sink any lower. Now, some of you might say, well, that's not possible. We could definitely sink lower. I mean, I guess, but what we put in our bodies is a huge part of why we're such a sick country. Smoking's bad. The drinking's bad. Drug abuse obviously is bad. But make no mistake, we are not a healthy nation by any stretch. We're one of the most unhealthy, and we have an obesity crisis. And part of the reason we have that is this poison that gets put into our foods. And make no mistake, most of this stuff is highly addictive. I've told this story before. I'll tell it again. I can remember when I was going to probably the most southwestern portion of the congressional district, door knocking for Jen during the campaign. And I actually stopped at McDonald's. This is the first and only time I've stopped at McDonald's in I can't tell you how many years. If you told me it was 10 years, it could very well be that long. I stopped at McDonald's. I got a double filet of fish sandwich. And I can remember biting into that sandwich and just thinking, I can see why this is so addicting. I can see why people come back for it all the time. And who knows how much poison is in that sandwich. And because the fast food mega giants like McDonald's get subsidized, they can afford to sell you these sandwiches on the cheap. Whereas eating healthy is not cheap. It's expensive. Remember, a lot of these industries are all interconnected. So that's why they're able to do what they do. Travers, as somebody who lives in the UK, I can't say for sure if there is any truth to that. You would have to cite it. I cannot speak to that. Correct. Sugar is really, really bad. And as John Nada says, I think we just need a yellow vest movement at this point. But who's going to lead it? We're so very broken up. It's going to take time, Don, but believe me, it'll be worth at least seeing where this is going to go. And you're right. Salt, fat, and sugar, when you put them all together, like they do at McDonald's, the bun's got sugar, the sandwich has fat, and it has salt, including the sauces, etc. You bite into it, it's like crack. That's what happens. The idea is to get you hooked. That's what it is, Kat. It is the Holy Trinity. Well, you're probably right, Knack, but ultimately I wouldn't know because I don't go there. My recommendation, listen, the fries at McDonald's are the best fries. They're totally incredible. If you've ever had them, believe me, they're really great. You're going to love them. Tremendously incredible. That is not true, Tim. I don't know who taught you that, but that's not true at all. It depends on what type of carbs you're putting into your body and what type of fat you're putting into your body. The healthiest carbohydrates that you could put into your body are obviously not processed. Usually a good source of fiber, possibly even fat. There's basically 2, 3. When it comes to the type of grains you want to eat, I mean, obviously, when it comes to the main dishes, I'm basically pescatarian across the board. I love fish, just seafood in general. Even that's becoming a real problem. I did not, I mean, if you're asking me, did I like it? I think it was a good message, and Super Size Me was made 20 years ago. And it has as much relevance today as it did then. But if you're going to eat a carbohydrate-based diet, steel-cut oatmeal is really good. Sweet potatoes, really good. Quinoa, really good. And brown rice is decent. But those are your 4. Those are your 4 grains that are carbohydrate heavy, that are just fine to have in your diet as a regular staple with your meals. Quinoa, brown rice, sweet potatoes, steel-cut oatmeal. Those are your best bets. You can also get some protein out of broccoli. You can also get some protein out of spinach. My 3 favorite greens: broccoli, spinach, and asparagus. And in particular, with broccoli and asparagus, I like to bake them in the oven with some avocado oil and a little bit of salt. And that's it. And they taste great. That's correct, Mac. If BlackRock is recommending anything, it's to make sure that you're not healthy. Couldn't agree more. Aspartame should not exist. You're better off having regular sugar if you need to have it. I love cauliflower too, says Fian. I think cauliflower is excellent. In fact, cauliflower is another great substitute for chicken, especially if you like, if you've ever had buffalo cauliflower, especially if it's roasted. Oh, excellent, excellent food. Vegetable oils are absolutely atrocious. Grapeseed, vegetable, canola, soybean. And you know, when you look at the labels on all those bags, the Cheetos, the Doritos, it's all there, all of it. And it takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of discipline to move away from it. Tim Buck coming in hot with some really good commentary. The keto diet definitely works. It takes a hell of a lot of discipline, but obviously it shouldn't be forever. Generally speaking, I would think otherwise. Schultze, this is becoming a little bit more of a regular occurrence now. Make sure you hit that like button. Very important. But Sunday nights for the pontificating crowd, I hope you guys will stick around. Got 51 people watching right now. I don't know how many people have hit the like button. We're going to finish up with a fairly lengthy segment. That's really, really amazing. And if that's what you did to honor your late wife, I'm sure she's very proud of you. It's very difficult to make these changes. It was very difficult for me. I may not look it, but I was not in good shape. In fact, I remember seeing a photograph of myself with a friend of mine right before I moved to Florida back in 2012. I look a lot different now than I did then, and in a much better way. Aging is a number for sure, but you can really slow down the aging process if you're willing to put in the work. Putting in the work is half the battle. But I will tell you, anybody who doesn't have a good diet and has been thinking about making that change, the thing you have to remember, it's the first 2 to 3 weeks. That first 2 to 3 weeks of transition to eating a healthy lifestyle, or living a healthy lifestyle, I should say, that's the hardest part. But once you're through it, you're good. In fact, you'll be so good, you're never going to want to go back, because eating food like McDonald's will literally physically make you sick. You might enjoy it when you first eat it, but believe me, when it's coming out here or back there, you're not going to like it, because your body is telling you that this is poison. Don't put it in your body. So that's what I recommend. And then you'll look forward to getting up every morning and exercising, which I do. So do it, Schultz. We're happy to have you here, Base Chad. We appreciate it. Chorizo, you're absolutely right. The best thing you could do for yourself is to cook your own food. And when you can afford to do so, when you go out to eat, go out to nice restaurants. And always read the reviews. Because very often, the quality of it makes a huge difference. I do weight training. I do yoga and Pilates to balance it out. And I like different types of active lifestyle activities: hiking, swimming, biking, kayaking, things like that. I would probably give boxing and jiu-jitsu a try, but that's what I do. High fructose corn syrup should be illegal as well. There is no point. And I know you got your libertarians that are extreme who say, well, you should be able to have whatever you want. Okay, fine. You can put in whatever you want. But we live in a monopolistic, broken economic and political system. So as a result, you're not going to have much choice. And let's not forget just how overly expensive everything has become. That is a huge part of the problem. Now, I am always happy to provide insight, and I will never tell you that the way I do it is the right way. I only am here to provide you with what has worked for me, and maybe it could work for you too. That's correct. Food is a drug for a lot of people, especially fried food, which is a huge staple. And that's what we have to change. Practice what you preach. You know, regardless of what happens with RFK, just the fact that he's out there giving us some guidance, or giving the populace guidance regarding what you're putting in your body and why it's bad for you, that matters. He's got a huge platform, and Trump, I mean, Trump likes anybody who they find, you know, that Trump is all about flattery. But I got to tell you, I can see that Trump really has a soft spot for RFK. So he's going to fight for him to let him have this. And if he does, yeah, this could be big. I certainly hope it is. Mitsunagi, coffee is actually not that bad at all. What I would say is coffee only gets bad depending on what you add to it. That's when coffee could become a problem. For me, the only thing that I would add would be something like coconut milk or half and half, but nothing that is sugar rich, if that makes sense. So when you see coffee mates that are with sugar, like hazelnut and macchiato, whatever they give, that's not good. So stay away from that. Drinking coffee is not bad. That's not bad, Sisyphean. Just don't add the sugar. That's what makes coffee bad. Caramel macchiato, don't drink that. You might as well have an ice cream sundae. You're better off. Trump is not as fat as people make him out to be. There's actually a very good YouTube video of him recently with golfer Roman DeChambeau on YouTube. Trump's actually a pretty good golfer. And I agree with Tim, absolutely. Intermittent fasting definitely works. You have to be disciplined, though. It's basically 16 off, 8 on, and you have to synchronize it very, very carefully. Matcha green tea with lemon, Travers. That's my go-to. I would stay away from that, Don. Anything that has imitation sugar is something that you want to stay away from. Maybe twice. I won't say 5. Speaking of Trump, when we look back on how we ended up here today, I think back to one of the most important moments in the 2020 presidential election. Bernie Sanders had a real chance to be president of the United States. Now, maybe they would have moved heaven and earth to stop him, and they certainly did both times. Perhaps if Bernie was willing to fight on a level that he should have been fighting on, he would have pulled it off. But I will tell you, it is not going to surprise me, since the left movement is just so decimated right now, any semblance of, and I'm talking about left populism. I'm talking about economic left populism. I'm not talking about the bullshit when they talk about the left, the overwoke nonsense. I don't play into any of that stuff, as you guys know. But I am 100% for workers' rights, even though I am in commercial real estate. Remember, if workers are doing well, then we as investors can do even better because they have more disposable income. Instead of everything just facilitating its way to the top, it's why I will do no business whatsoever with private equity. It's not, I won't do it. I hope that there are more people out there who share the same sentiment. Now, what I will tell you is that AOC is looking for her opportunity, and she's playing the game, if you will. But I will tell you, things could have been a hell of a lot different today than they are right now. When Bernie Sanders went on Joe Rogan back in 2020, at the time, it was incredible because it got over 10 million views. And the Democratic establishment was literally losing their mind. Ultimately, Bernie made the wrong choice, but it's amazing how things can change. I'm going to show you guys how it changed. This is Bernie on Joe Rogan back in 2020.
Is the idea that healthcare is a human right, not a privilege, a radical idea?
I don't think it is.
It's not. And the truth is, we are the only major country on earth. Many people don't know this. We're the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right, and yet we end up spending almost twice as much per capita on health care. The function, and you can argue with me if you want, but the function of the current healthcare system is not to provide quality care to all. It is to make tens of billions of dollars in profit for the drug companies and the insurance companies. That's the function. All that I want to do over a 4-year period is to expand it. Today, eligibility age is 65. I want to take it down to 55, 45, 35, everybody over a 4-year period. That's about it. And I want to expand benefits to include dental care, hearing aids, and eyeglasses as well. That's about it. Not too radical. I heard a little.
He's absolutely right. And Adam, healthcare is a right in every developed country in the world. You can stop with the libertarian talking point of the whole Hippocratic Oath bullshit that Rand Paul once put out there. Keep in mind, Rand Paul, who I do like, his father is Ron Paul, a very successful politician. And Rand Paul is a doctor. But that bullshit about Hippocratic Oath nonsense doesn't fly. It's all bullshit. The only thing that would happen with a single-payer healthcare system is we would still have a free market for doctors to make as much money as they're capable of making based on the merits of their abilities. You would simply be removing the for-profit middlemen in between us and our doctors, and the facilitation of funds would go directly through the government. The government wouldn't run healthcare. They would be funding healthcare. You're good enough to make $1 million a year? By all means. Aetna, Cigna, Pfizer, United, they don't need to exist. They offer nothing. They are the welfare queens of society. They need to go. And single payer is how we do it.
Is exactly the same thing as in every other aspect of our lives. It's the power of money. All right, listen to this. Over the last 20 years, the drug companies alone have spent $4.5 billion in 20 years on lobbying and campaign contributions. That's what we're up against. The knowledge, and I mark my words, within a short period of time, you will see TV ads in California, all over this country, demonizing Bernie Sanders. He wants to do this terrible thing to you. He wants to do that. They have unbelievable amounts of money, and politicians are frightened of that power. I'll give you one example. Back in 2016, I got involved here in a little way with an effort on the part of the nurses to control the cost of prescription drugs in California. You may recall that effort.
I do.
It was a ballot item in one state here in California. Do you know how much the drug companies alone spent to defeat that effort? They spent $131 million on one ballot item in one state.
This is what we're up against. And this was not talked about, not even for a second, by the Donald when I came on. Did he talk about anything related to things like this? Of course not. This is the one guy who really got it. And he had to be put down like a rabid dog.
All right. Last year, the top 10 drug companies made $69 billion. A week ago, I went to Canada with a number of Americans who are dealing with diabetes. We bought insulin in Windsor, Ontario for 1/10 the price, 10% of the price, same exact product being charged in America. So you got drug companies that are engaged in collusion and in price fixing, who are incredibly greedy. And the result is many elderly people, many working people simply cannot afford the medicine they need. It's unbelievable. Today in America, you got 3 people owning more wealth than the bottom half of the American society. You don't see that on television too much, do you?
No, you don't.
3 people. You got the top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 92%. Listen to this. This is a statistic we recently saw. It came from the Federal Reserve. Over the last 30 years, the top 1% has seen a $21 trillion increase in their wealth. The bottom half of America has seen a $900 billion decline in their wealth. So what you have in America today is a relatively small number of incredibly wealthy people. And I deal with these guys every day. People say, oh, we're talking about rich. You don't know what rich is. what multi-billion-dollar operations are.
And that is something that Bernie is 1,000% correct about. People cannot, and are not able to fully wrap their heads around what this type of wealth and power is all about. They don't. You have people today that are richer than cities, major cities. What they're worth, got people that are worth more than that. That's beyond insane power. That's global changing level power. That's crazy. And that should scare everybody. And Bernie's been talking about this for a long time. Unfortunately, he wasn't willing to fight the way that he needed to. But we'll continue.
Incredible power over our society. And if you are the pharmaceutical industry, and last year 10 companies made $69 billion in profit, you're sitting around right now saying, all right, that's great. How do we do better next year? What strategy do we have? We're going to put a lot of ads on. We're going to work with during the CNN debate that I participated in recently, in the debate, right in the middle of the debate, the drug companies and the insurance companies had an ad telling how bad Medicare for all would be. So they're smart guys. And they use their power over politicians. They use their power over the media. They spend billions of dollars on advertising on media to make sure that they make as much as they can in profit. You know, they will tell you this, all of their money on research and development. We're tackling cancer. We're tackling diabetes, Alzheimer's. The truth is, of course they are. But the bulk of their money is going off into what we call Me Too drugs. They make modest changes in a drug, which really doesn't improve people's well-being in order to make profits. So the answer is yes. We need, obviously, vigorous research and development. And by the way, your tax dollars, all of our tax dollars, often goes to that research, and we don't get the benefit of it in terms of lower prices.
Now, Bernie, unfortunately, does not have the dynamic personality that Trump does. When Bernie went on with Rogan, he went on for just over an hour. Trump went on for 3 hours. And of course, he talked about a lot of things that were not politically related. And that's something a lot of people like. Bernie can and was never really able to get out of that mindset. But his messaging was spot on. And Rogan said, I support Bernie. I'd like for him to be president. And when over 10 million of your listeners listen and hear that, that's going to have an impact, especially because it happened on the eve of the primaries. That's a big deal. And they couldn't have that. So they had to squash him. They had to squash Bernie. And you know who squashed Bernie possibly the hardest? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Oh, Colin, what is this? Please give me the stuff that I gave you, that I forwarded you earlier for AOC. I want to show you guys.
It's there. You forwarded me a lot. That was one of them.
I didn't realize you were all attached to one. This one right here. Okay. No, this is not it either. I sent you an article earlier regarding AOC.
Oh, okay. It's here.
AOC backed away. That's it. So, right after the Rogan interview, everybody came down very hard on Bernie and told Bernie to reject Joe Rogan's endorsement because Joe Rogan said some bad things. So he must be rejected. It's like pulling teeth. AOC backed away from Sanders' campaign after Joe Rogan endorsement. This is from March of 2020. Scroll down, please. Representative AOC declined multiple pleas from the Bernie Sanders campaign to stump for the Vermont senator's candidacy after the Iowa caucuses, according to HuffPo. Ocasio-Cortez was heavily involved in the campaign's build-up to Iowa, headlining 7 rallies for Sanders in Iowa over the weekend on January 24th to January 26th. But the progressive New York representative disagreed with the campaign over its decision to promote the endorsement of Joe Rogan, the popular podcaster who has been criticized by LGBT activists for opposing puberty blockers for gender-confused children. He has also spoken out against the participation of biological males competing in women's sports. Faiz Shakar, Sanders' campaign manager, also reportedly criticized AOC for a polarizing speech in which she advocated for those in attendance to help illegal aliens to avoid ICE. She also failed to mention Sanders' name in the January 25th speech, a fact highlighted by Fox News. When the campaign attempted the same strategy of touting AOC for Sanders in New Hampshire, she refused multiple times before ultimately speaking the day before the February 12th primary at a Sanders rally. It was like pulling teeth to get her to New Hampshire. Then from February 11th to March 8th, Ocasio-Cortez rejected numerous invitations from the campaign to speak on Sanders' behalf in Nevada, South Carolina, and the 14 states that voted on Super Tuesday. She finally agreed to speak at a Get Out the Vote rally at the University of Michigan campus in Ann Arbor on Sunday, which was an apparent last-minute decision, forcing the campaign to release a revised media advisory about the rally the night before the event. HuffPo reported that neither the Sanders campaign nor the Ocasio-Cortez's campaign office denied the facts of the story. Senator Sanders and our campaign will never forget that in one of the most difficult moments for us, AOC gave us a boost with her strong endorsement. And she has remained a steady and consistent ally, supporter, surrogate, and advisor to the senator, blah, blah, blah. In an interview in January, AOC bashed the Democratic Party for being too big of a tent. In any other country, Joe Biden and I would not be in the same party, but in America we are. But Sanders' campaign used the same tent language to defend the Rogan endorsement, saying in a statement that sharing a big tent requires including those who do not share every one of our beliefs, while always making clear that we will never compromise our values. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden slammed the comments, saying on January 27th that there was no room for compromise and calling transgender equality the civil rights issue of our time. Transgender equality, the civil rights issue of our time. AOC then said in an interview released February 2nd that Democrats must rally behind the eventual nominee, no matter who it is, despite calling Biden not a pragmatic choice last June. She's been pulling our legs forever. Is she the reason that Bernie did not win the nomination? You can never put it on one person's shoulders. But there is no question. You think Tulsi's calculating? Alex is extremely calculating. She took full advantage of the movement to boost her position within the party apparatus. And she's got her eyes set on big things in the future. And especially now that the party is in shambles, there's a huge opening for her to make even bigger moves. It is what it is, baby. This is the way it's going to be. And then this happened last night.
Congratulations, sir.
Congratulations, Mr.
Amazing how much things have changed. I don't want anyone to forget this segment. In fact, I want you to save it. Because when anybody, and I mean anybody, brings up Alex as some type of a progressive bastion to support in the future, just remember, she'll stab you in the back and in the front. I didn't realize, and maybe at the time, it's a little difficult because in March, we were already dealing with the pandemic. At least we were down excuse me, we're dealing with that down here in Florida, and we were also in the midst of Jen's congressional campaign, first one against Wasserman Schultz. So I didn't actually remember that much from that particular time with, AOC doing what she did, which obviously in many ways was devastating to Bernie. The problem with the squad and AOC, as Sajid points out, they were indirectly anti-white and overly woke, which turns off most of the country. Bernie 2016 was the way. I don't agree with everything, but I understand what you're saying. Yeah, the overwoke shit doesn't work. And being constantly told that you're racist, you're sexist, you're big. I mean, you can call me. I've been called everything in the book. I don't care. Doesn't bother me. But for a lot of people, it just gets under their skin to the point in which they're like, fuck it, I'll just go support Trump. And you know who decided that they were just going to say, fuck it, I'm going to go support Trump? Joe Rogan. And you better believe Rogan had an impact on that election. He did. Because the surge, particularly in men aged 18 to 29, broke in a big way for Trump. Rogan definitely had a hand in that. Smugness doesn't work. Official People's Party USA, I do not agree with you about Rogan. I don't think he's a grift. I just think he's not everybody's cup of tea. And that's okay. It is unfortunate, but this is where we are today. It was everything, Minalita, AOC, Elizabeth Warren. The Democrats were so smart and smug about it, but what they ended up doing was hastening the shift in such a way. If Bernie was the nominee in 20 and had beaten Trump, you never know. You never know where we'd be sitting today. But what I do know, people should always be skeptical of those that they put on a pedestal that they think that they can trust, especially in elected office. AOC is going to attempt to get her power in the not too distant future. So keep in mind that this is how she thinks, and this is how she treats people that she thinks that you would think would be allies, but it turns out she didn't really have any. I wouldn't trust her as far as I could throw her. And that was her either miscalculation or merely her decision, because she's ambitious. And ambitious politicians are very dangerous people. They are the ones that will almost assuredly throw you under the bus if they get a chance, if it's going to help them. And in the case of AOC, she did have a role in basically kneecapping Bernie in 20. Well, I wonder how she feels now. The GOP is in a position to potentially be in power for the next decade plus. So congratulations, you played yourself right out of a position of opportunity. Total fucking shame. Remember, guys, this is a very trying time, and we're all looking for answers in terms of how to move forward. But as I've often said, as Jen has often said, everything is all about labor and how we go forward. How do we end the genocide in Gaza? How do we continue to unite around issues that really matter? It's going to be a long, winding road, but we certainly hope you'll all stick with us. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m., for sure. Harvey K. We will be addressing a number of topics. We'll probably address AOC's Instagram reaction when she was addressing her voters that broke in a big way for Trump, but also voted for her. Wanted to know why that happened. We're going to talk about how Joe Biden, or the Biden administration, I should say, are drawing us ever so much closer to World War III. We're going to see if Matt Gaetz is confirmed as Attorney General. Matt Gaetz has expressed support for Lena Khan as the head of the FTC. Will that stay? Who knows? A lot of what ifs. But for all of you guys here, John Nada, Travers, Ron McKinn, Donald James, Kat Negrita, Aaron Salentine, Adam Goodman, Schultze, Daryl Riley, Base Chad, Mitsunagi, John Nada, Official People Parties USA, Ron McKinnon, Sajid Nasir, Knack for that, Ray J, Person of Interest, Not Bloody Likely, Joe Anthony, love that one by Monet. Single payer is simply public health insurance. It's not a government-controlled healthcare system. David Hunter, Mina Lita, Scott Bloom, Doug Grinbergs, Tim Buck, Sisyphean, Jason R., Chorizo and eggs, Yo Groove. Is it Yog Groove? I guess that's how you would say it. Andrew Dwyer. I think that's about it. You guys have been excellent. And Tony D, I don't know if I said you, Tony, but I'm throwing you another line. Jay Boggs. Jay, it's unfortunate if you left too early because you didn't want to hear. Bobby Kennedy had a few things to say, and I thought they were certainly useful to say. Don't have to agree with everything. So, with that said, person of no interest. Yes, Meatwad, I would definitely say that that's probably the closest in terms of my political disposition. Libertarian left, pro-business independent. That's where I'm at. That's my politics. I'm going to try to make this a regular occurrence on Sunday evenings. Pontificating with Pete will fall at this time. Get yourself ready to go for the new week. But remember, smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things that we ask you to do. We appreciate you all very, very much. We'll see you tomorrow night.